I'm Richard Whittle, author, illustrator, martial arts instructor, and father. You know, when my son was younger, like many of you who have children, bedtime at our house was always preceded by story time. And I read dozens of books to my little boy as he grew up, each book taking us on a different adventure right before heading off to sleep. But the stories my son liked the best were always the stories that I made up myself. I had always enjoyed writing stories in verse or in poetic form. These stories were always more fun to tell with a rhythmic cadence and flow that made it easy for my son to memorize and speak along with me as I told the story. And as he got older, of course, my son no longer required me to read him stories before bedtime. But he always encouraged me to illustrate and publish the stories that I had written just for him, so that others, according to him, could enjoy the stories that made his childhood special. And that's where you come in. But first, let's start with one of my son's favorite stories, Wake Up, Pooka Bear. Have you ever met anybody who has a hard time waking up in the morning? Me too, but you've never met anybody who has a hard time waking up like the little bear in our story. Early in the morning, where all nice days begin, slept a rolled-up quilted blanket and a Pooka Bear within. She was pretty like a panda and fuzzy like a squirrel with eyes as big as peaches, and definitely a girl. Pooka's mama came into her room to wake her baby bear and sang a soft and cheerful song that gently filled the air. Wake up, little Pooka Bear, wake up, rise and shine, it's time to pick the Pooka berries fresh from the vine. But Pooka kept on snoozing, 'cause Pookas need their rest. She ignored her mother's singing and stayed snuggled in her nest. Then her mama opened up her curtains to let the sun shine on her child and began to sing again in a voice so kind and mild. Wake up, little Pooka Bear, time to face the day. Chase the sleepies from your eyes and make the drowsies run away. But Pooka kept on sleeping. You could hear her Pooka snore. She still had winks to catch and dreams left to explore. Then came in her brothers, one younger and one older, and whispered something in her ear. And this is what they told her. Wake up, little Pooka Bear, or we will tickle your nose and make our way down to your belly and end up at your toes. But Pooka kept on sleeping, and try as her brothers might, they could not wake up their little sister who held her blanket tight. Then came in her daddy with a giant megaphone to wake up his little Pooka who wouldn't wake up on her own. First, he cleared his Pooka throat in a polite and Pooka manner, then sang all the words to the Star-Spangled Banner. But Pooka kept on dreaming. There was no mistake. Even Daddy's megaphone couldn't bring Pooka awake. Then Grandma came into the room, dressed in a Scottish kilt, and looked down at little Pooka Bear still wrapped up in her quilt. She had a funny instrument pressed against her lips, and a bag like a vacuum cleaner strapped around her hips. Grandma had her bagpipes on, but she'd never had a lesson, and every song she tried to play was with notes that she was guessing. When she blew into the bagpipes, they made an awful sound, like a band of screaming banshees or a lonely baying hound. But when she finished playing, to everyone's surprise, the little Pooka Bear had not opened her eyes. Next came Uncle Pooka, who brought his fire truck, and 4 Pooka-friendly firemen who thought they'd try their luck. They pulled a hose into her room and sprayed her down with water. She no longer looked quite like a bear, but now more like an otter. And Pooka kept on sleeping. Her nose was wet but cute, although her pillow was now soaking where she buried in her snoot. Then came Cousin Pooka, who flew in with a breeze. He worked with the circus, high on the trapeze. He brought a couple clowns and an elephant or two, his friend the lion tamer, and a boxing kangaroo. The room was loud and crowded, with barely room to stand, when they busted out some instruments and started up a band. They shouted and they whistled and they stomped on the floor, and everyone made noise till they couldn't anymore. And this went on for hours, but Pooka didn't care. She didn't seem to notice that anyone was there. Now worn out and exhausted, they all needed a rest, and although she was still sleeping, they felt they'd done their best. So they all lay down together in a giant Pooka heap, and soon the crowd of waker-uppers had fallen fast asleep. Suddenly, Pooka Bear woke up in her bed. She stretched and yawned and rubbed her eyes and scratched her Pooka head. She looked around her room and was amazed at what she saw. Firemen and circus clowns left her wondering in awe. She saw her daddy and her grandma, her mom and brothers too, and lots of strange animals like she'd seen once at the zoo. And although she didn't understand what this all must be about, one thing was very clear to her, of which she had no doubt. It was nap time, thought Pooka Bear, my favorite time of day. Then laid down her Pooka head, and her dreams took her away. Well, we hope you liked our story. And if you did, you'll also like many of our other stories, also written in verse and designed to make you smile. We're really excited to be raising money to produce, distribute, and publish Wake Up Pooka Bear. It'll be made on a 6x9 soft cover book on 70-pound paper that is apparently the best thing you can use for full color. So we also need funding for promotional advertising and the development of a professional-looking website so that everybody all around the world can find our books and the products related to our books. And it also takes a little bit of money to produce some of the unique gifts that we're going to be sending out to those of you who'd like to contribute to our cause. And so I'd like to thank you ahead of time for what you're about to do. Your donation not only makes dreams come true, but with a little luck, will create story time, memory time for generations to come. Thanks very much.